Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, November 13th, 2025. Time for another show. Just hang on a second. I'm typing an email out to my friend Jeffrey Epstein, confessing to any number of horrific crimes. I will be right back. I have to spell everything wrong and take out all the capital letters and punctuation, apparently. I guess online world, Washington, D.C., and a few other places, pockets around the world, I'm sure. A buzz with Jeffrey Epstein talk, except mostly it's, oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein, he's everything everybody thought he was. But also, so are about 10,000 other rich, famous people. I think the most revealing part of the treasure trove, I guess, of emails back and forth from the Epstein estate, apparently, turned over first in the morning by Democrats and then later, for some reason, by Republicans in an effort to show, oh, we can release these things too. We're not afraid. And I think maybe as an effort to convince people, this may actually have had something to do with it, an effort to convince people that those are the Epstein files that everybody's talking about. They are not. And people who have been following this stuff very closely as experts will tell you, yeah, we knew this stuff before. And by the way, this is the stuff that wasn't damaging enough for the DOJ to have collected and held as the Epstein files. This is what the Epstein estate turned over in response to a request from congressional investigators, but that I guess would not be locked in the secret vault as evidence the DOJ thought that it might use in any trial back in the day, before he died, against Jeffrey Epstein. So there's much more to come, and it's horrific if it's to come out. Anyway, they have a million different ways to block it from coming out, including just setting it on fire right in front of everybody and saying it was never here, and leave us alone, and we'll send troops to your city if you don't like it. I mean, there is that option, but in the normal workaday world, people were plenty busy poring over these emails because they were just, I don't know, interesting, if not necessarily revelatory about, well, certainly not about who Jeffrey Epstein was, but although we learned a little bit more about who other people around him were, and that's weird. And I guess the other takeaway was they can't spell. And they seem to be infantile in their communications, but they were infantile in their, preoccupations too, I guess. But among the smartest, most elite people in the world, they don't bother with capitalization or punctuation or correct spelling. They spell in text speak like kids, when I guess they're spending enough of their time with them. Maybe that's what they took away from the situation. I don't know. It's really discouraging and weird, and it caused me to say, I guess if I had career advice for a kid coming up in the world today, it would be a dumb weirdo, because that appears to pay off tremendously for the right kind of dumb weirdo, of course. Other people pointed out to me, well, you should be white. Try that if you can. And if you have a wealthy benefactor who will pay you to be a dumb weirdo, well, then you're set for life. You could, if you wanted to, be super smart and efficient if you had a wealthy benefactor. Then you could do whatever you want at that point. But then it's not you, is it? It's the other guy. Anyway, I was just astonished, as was Chris Hayes, by the way, who actually spent some time, grousing about this too. What was with all of the fawning over Jeffrey Epstein as being this massive intellect when, well, at least in his casual communication, he appears to be a rank idiot. But whatever. That's not even the biggest news. The news that affects most of us today, besides sports and sports betting, I guess, is the shutdown is over. Today is not the 44th day of the shutdown, as my count up would have anticipated. It was, in fact, instead the 78th day until the next shutdown. So there you go. The counter is back on again. We're 78 days from the next shutdown. It is, in fact, slated for January 30th. Those of you who are listening earlier in the week or end of last week, watched us predict that without, well, not predicted, it had already been set, but without actually looking at the legislation, figuring out, all right, well, let's see, they said January, so what's sensible? And the answer is a Friday when everybody is looking to get out of town, and not necessarily the end of the month or anything like that. But they'd be looking at a Friday. The 30th of January is, in fact, a Friday. I'll bet that this is an extension of spending until January 30th. And now the text is out. It was out before. Now I've looked at the text, and it is, in fact, January 30th. So that gives us 78 days until the next, what will then be a partial shutdown of the government. But the United States Department of Agriculture will be able to continue churning along, as will the Veterans Affairs Department. And there's no small thing there. But there are lots of other small things, and some of them are actually rather large, but we're going to play them down a little bit. Greg Dworkin is here to share them with us. And for the musical segment, we have something different. It's not meant to be a fanfare, though, so we could just throw in one of our favorites along the way there. But Greg Dworkin is here and has something queued up along with the rest of the news. And we'll go right to it, I guess, except, I don't know, what do we want to play in anything here? How about this? How about good old Rocky and Bullwinkle?
Yeah, always relevant.
You know, just to keep things light. There were Russian spies involved in the Rocky and Bullwinkle situation.
That's
there
Rocky
Russian spies.
Flying, but, you know, and it sounds like planes, but pretend in your mind it's rockets.
Right. I know, and it sounds like the...
Rocket J Squirrel, that's right. Rocky.
Unfortunately, now it sounds like the eastern Ukraine regions with rockets flying over all the time. But,
so,
yeah,
I'm going to give you a question, which you don't have to answer immediately, but you can think about it while we do this other thing.
But get a discharge
when the government reopened, that means Adelita Grijalva was signed in, and that happened.
Yes,
and then she immediately signed the discharge petition.
Not immediately enough for me, but yeah.
Well,
she did.
Immediately enough for me is not immediately enough for me is a wonderful thing, because that's part of the question. So then the reporter said, okay, now that she signed it, this is absolutely positively going to come to a vote, and we'll see that vote sometime early December. And I said to myself, early December, why? If they're going by, 7 working days in Congress, it would be 2029 before they voted. So,
could be.
What's the exact reason for that? And while we do that, I thought to myself, this whole thing has been a con job. And speaking of con jobs, I happen to be playing a new video game out called Outer Worlds 2, part of a series. And the conceit of that game is that a mega corporation... the CEO happens to be a woman named Auntie, Uncle Auntie, and sells you all sorts of products that are absolute garbage, but the jingles are just so cute. They make you buy them. She sells stuff that's to eat, for example, while you're stuck on a moon or out in space that are absolutely food adjacent.
Food, okay. Ew.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
If you eat it for a week, your tongue will turn black. But other than that, the side effects are, she's not responsible. They are, for example, parasite free. That is to say, if you find a parasite, it's free.
All right.
So I thought I'd play you, because it occurred to me that we have the Auntie's Choice president here, who's always trying to sell you stuff, con job. And that's why I thought we'd open up with this... If you're a Django or Andrew Sisters or 40s swing music adjacent, you'll appreciate.
Okay, so this is
She's just the best choice. It's Auntie's Choice.
Nice.
You've let yourself slide, feeling down on your luck. Fell off the ladder and you think that you're stuck. The only loser is the shirker who quits. Your problems can be solved if you spend more bits. Try, never settle for less. It's true what they say, money buys happiness.
Hey, they
work extra shifts, you can sleep later. We've got the goods to make you better than nature.
Interesting. All right. It goes
you
on
can
from
stop
there,
there.
but okay, that gives me a
Well,
flavor
then
of
they
it.
just do the Django music and all, and it's just wonderful. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Look, I know it's slop. Your life
Content.
stinks. There's nothing you can do. There'll be a gladiator fight later today, but
Yay.
spend your money. It'll
Bread,
cheer you up.
circuses.
And the only people that are really losing out are the ones who won't work double shifts. And don't worry, we got you. Take these pills. They're better than nature. And, vote
Yeah,
for
I get
me.
the voting too. Interesting, and an interesting emphasis on one of the words. What was it? They've got the products to keep us. I guess they meant content, and they said it content to make it rhyme, I guess. But that is interesting. Like, I guess in our great AI slop future, maybe that is the aim, to keep everyone content. You're gonna turn your life into content for my great internet machine. I don't know. I don't think that's what they meant, but it could
like
work.
with Claire Obscure, you'll notice I buy it for the music and then I play it for, while I'm listening to the music. That's the whole point.
Yeah, all right. Well,
So let's talk a little bit of
congratulations to
Shutdown
them.
Showdown here.
all right.
I got a pro and con for you. These stuff, takes time to write. How come you didn't present this the day after the show? Because it wasn't written yet.
Right. We could have made it up on the fly.
We did, but
Oh.
When somebody
Yeah, sometimes
thoughtful
we do
sits
do
down
that.
and writes, sometimes it's better.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's a major theme of the show. Is like I had these thoughts, but here someone has organized them.
So this one
Okay.
is a pro shutdown.
Pro.
Washington Monthly, Bill
Shutdown.
Scher, often has a centrist who often has interesting views.
Yeah, that's
The
an
Democratic
interesting place for
shutdown
him to be.
capitulation, a perfect and unnecessary failure. Once again, an opposition party instigated a shutdown
see.
but failed to win a big-time White House concession. It didn't have to be this way. I will interject. Well, history says it does because it's never worked out any other way ever. And that's
Yeah.
the con part from Jonathan Bernstein, a liberal political scientist writing in a political scientist place, good authority. But let's do Bill Scher first, because I know there's a lot of people that still think that. Just because I think, look, it was inevitable and cut your losses and run. That's what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, they've won the fight that they wanted, which is to center healthcare for this next election, for the next year, a thing that Republicans cannot run away from. So what Bill Scher says, I wasn't expecting a rogue Democratic faction to cave in such a politically illogical fashion when they were on the cusp of proving doubters like me wrong. In September, I sketched out the typical progression of events in a shutdown. Public attention shifts to how the shutdowns hurt average Americans, how one political party is willing to harm constituents, one public opinion turns. The shutdown agitators invariably realize the shutdown failed to provide negotiating leverage and eventually cave. That's the conventional thinking. I think Schumer and the Republicans and the Democrats all figured in the end that's what's going to be what happens. But the way it played out is that it turned out the shutdown, I won't say it was popular, but let's just put it this way. This is C.J. Warnke commenting on a Navigator survey just out. Over the shutdown, a growing majority grew to disapprove of Trump. -10 to -18 was the shift, and his handling of the economy from -15 to -21. 16% of Trump voters say they regret voting for him. Remember, if you lose 16% voters, you gain 32% if they vote for you, because it's one off from them,
Shift.
one to you. 32 is a big number. By 26%, Americans blame Trump and the GOP for healthcare premiums going up. So in that sense, the Democrats did their job. And his approval is really down a lot. We'll go into that in a moment. But what happened is public opinion turned against Republicans. So Scher figures, look, this was the time. This is the exception that makes the rule. And yeah, Democrats were susceptible to the plight of federal workers, but all they got was a promise to schedule a vote. I don't think it's because they're timid, just because they're wrong. And I would throw in something else. Karen Tumulty, and I don't have this piece at my fingertips, but I saw it flash by, said, yes, it was about the 60 vote threshold. It was about the filibuster.
Really?
Because what? You mean Democrats were afraid they'd get rid of it and Trump would do these horrible things? No. Democrats were afraid they'd get rid of it because they like it.
Oh, well, yeah, there are some.
Why do they like it? There are some. And who are those some? Those some are the moderate Democrats who get out of taking a position because the filibuster says they don't have to.
We can't. I'd love to do that. We just can't because filibuster.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. On the point of the filibuster, I guess my biggest shock about the analysis of whether or not the filibuster and its possible elimination was at the center of any of this stuff is the weird assumption that it would be a wholesale, full elimination of the filibuster across the board. And
as opposed to a talking filibuster or all the variations.
That, or I just thought a limited bullet point filibuster change like they've done every other time. There's no evidence to me that they were contemplating its entire elimination, and every change since 2013 has been very limited and saying, all right, well, we're going to eliminate it for the consideration of judges and executive appointments. All right, well, we're going to add the Supreme Court to that. All right, well, we're going to do it, but only for this type of legislation or this particular piece of legislation. And I just thought that they would say, the Republicans, if forced, would find it very easy to say, we've been in a government shutdown at this point, probably it would be about 55 days. It's nearing 2 full months. We can't have this. We're going to eliminate the filibuster for clean CRs to reopen the government, something like that, and just do it that way. I just didn't really understand the idea, the assumption that they would say, well, we need to eliminate it across the board for everything always, so let's do it that way. They would just do as narrow as necessary to win their point, I thought.
Right, an option that you don't have any control over because you don't have the votes. So
right.
As a Democrat, you look at this. Bill Scher has an interesting point here. He says they should have held, but I understand why they didn't. And
well,
he says, my counsel to Democrats was
of
wash your hands of the appropriations process. Tell Republicans it's their problem to solve. Then they could either watch Republicans junk the filibuster or beg for Democratic help on Democratic terms. And again, we said this the other day. We've been saying this all week. In the end, you either have to hold fast forever, the government never reopens, or you have to junk the filibuster because the government is going to reopen.
Some part of it. Yeah. Yes. Eventually.
So what other endgame do you have? And he points out, walking away from the table would have avoided this, in which Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer entered a high-stakes battle without full commitment from his caucus and then invokes John Boehner. A leader without followers is a man taking a walk.
Yeah.
Or in other words, not much of a leader.
Yes, true. And I know that there's lots of excitement also about replacing him or forcing him out. Not super exciting to me because I know a little bit about, the process of selecting a new one. And it's torturous. And I promise that agitators are not going to be happy with whoever they select next. Right. But that's all right. I mean, I don't mind going through that as well.
We're not married to Schumer, and who cares?
No, I'm not protecting him. I'm just saying, well, it's usually not it's not a great party, not the Democratic Party, but it's not a big, celebration party from here on in. If they replace him, you'll just end up frustrated with someone else.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I don't care about
Schumer.
The question on the table is, how is this supposed to go, regardless of who was the minority leader? Mm-hmm. And, that to me is the issue, is like there was no other end game. And as far as the filibuster goes, look, you can't make people feel differently than they feel. And if there are people like Tim Kaine or Dick Durbin or whoever they pick to vote that way,
like
or absolutely John Fetterman, who has said this publicly, who say, I don't want the filibuster to go away, then there's only one other option.
Yeah, he's really exhausted. And I mean, there's not an excuse. You're not supposed to get exhausted in this job. And if you do, you're supposed to leave. And I understand why he's exhausted. He's had a major health event. But yeah, every time I see him interviewed, he as much as says, I'm no longer up to this job.
Right.
But I got it. So here I go.
Well, he won't have it for long. But the other side of the coin is how well the Democrats did on this last election day, and what that means
was good. Remember that?
And well, the thing is, if you want a better result, you're going to have to change who's there. Is my point.
All right. When's our next chance to do that?
In a year. Okay. And so you just got to work hard for a year.
Write that down.
Do those double shifts. I'm not saying take things that'll make you better than nature. I'm just saying, you're you're going to have to do that for a bit. Now, the other side of the coin is Jonathan Bernstein writing in Good Politics, Bad Politics on good authority. And he says, shutdowns end. There was no winning move, but the Democrats played it better than people think.
Yeah.
I foolishly waited 24 hours before doing a shutdown rap.
How dare you?
While my brother David, the journalist, read an excellent one yesterday, making the crucial point that this White House doesn't seem to care how unpopular the president is, not as long as he can sell you slop like Anthony's Choice.
Yeah,
so Josh Hooter beat me to it. As he put it, Democrats may have overperformed on policy and underperformed on politics. And I think that's really a good summary.
All right. So on average, did it average out to performing adequately across the board?
So it averages to like a normie kind of result.
All right.
I look at it and say they won on policy. They couldn't force the Republicans to do what the Republicans absolutely are adamant against doing, but they did center all of the Republicans' flaws for days so that people could see what they are. And as a result, their approval ratings have plunged. That's pretty darn good. Yes, they didn't play the politics right. Well, that's actually pretty good politics. And, again, one could argue you can't know what's going to happen next. But as Bill Scher, taking the other side, correctly pointed out, you're winning until you're losing. People who think that forever they'd always blame Republicans and never blame Democrats probably think the stock market only goes up.
Oh, yeah. Well, it does.
Yeah, until it comes down.
Right.
And what they're trying to do is you have to get out before the crash. If you get out before the crash, somebody's going to yell at you that you got out too soon.
Right. But they'll entice you back. Buy the dip.
Yeah, buy the dip. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we pointed this out, I think, in passing the other day. I just want to do it in passing again, too, is that I found it very interesting that people said we don't want to cave because we want, and we're willing to keep things shut down because we need to make Republicans live with the consequences of their policy choices, especially around healthcare and with the ACA premiums. And then everybody was angry about the shutdown ending, and I was thinking, but it didn't address the fact that
now they have to have the
yeah.
consequences of not doing anything.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you wanted, isn't it?
That's true. And you can still be mad about, I don't know, the optics of the shutdown fight, I guess. But if you
that's what Hooter meant by win policy, lose politics.
Yeah. So I'm a little confused about what we were supposed to do in terms of satisfying those guys, but it might just be maybe we can't, and also it might not matter that we don't.
Well, my analogy was you played a weak hand in a weak way, but if you play a weak hand in a strong way, you still have a weak hand.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, and it's hard to tell the difference.
So Jonathan Bernstein throws in one thing I want to emphasize up top. Had Democrats stuck together longer, it's possible the shutdown would have been ended with the elimination of a Senate filibuster. Now, liberal filibuster opponents are bitter that it didn't end that way. In my view, they're dramatically underestimating the damage that Republicans would do over the next 15 months with the constraint removed, including, among other things, election legislation. Yeah. They haven't passed it because filibuster blocks it. Essentially, in the middle of a full-on assault by Republicans against the Republic, eliminating the filibuster would suddenly give them a powerful new weapon. That doesn't seem sensible to me at all. Whatever one thinks about Senate structure in the abstract.
Yes, I just disagree with that as the analysis of the filibuster portion.
Right, because you can do different things. You can do partials.
Yeah, and not only because you can, but because every time they've addressed it, they have done it exactly that way. Now, they could depart from all of that, but the fact that Thune and others were still hesitant. Like, if it's really such a bonanza for Republican policy, why are they hesitant? And the answer is because they really weren't actually contemplating that. They were contemplating small bore stuff just to get by, and they didn't even want to do that.
Right. Well, okay, smart guy, if that's the case,
I think
that precedent always says that you never really get rid of the filibuster, you just modify the filibuster, and that's the way it always works. Is it not also true that precedent says that whoever starts the shutdown demanding stuff of the larger group on the other side always loses?
I think we can say that with more confidence now. Prior to this one, the only data we had
was going to be the exception.
one-sided, right? So we were going to say, up until now, the only shutdowns ever initiated, I think, were initiated by Republicans, and they always lost, so that must be the rule. Republicans always lose this thing, but it did sound, even as we were saying,
well, actually,
that sounds
Republicans
like a
did
dumb
lose
rule.
this thing. If you're looking at the public opinion.
It held. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess there is that argument. I lose my place in this argument because I keep opening up social media to links that say, from angry Democrats saying, here's why the Democrats lost the shutdown. And maybe the answer to why Democrats lost the shutdown is if Republicans had lost the shutdown, Republican columnists would never write, Republicans lost the shutdown. They would write, we won the shutdown.
Well, here's some points that Jonathan Bernstein makes,
right.
And then we'll finish with the shutdown and move on to other stuff. Democrats in Congress are particularly poorly positioned to oppose Donald Trump successfully just because of their numbers.
Yes.
They lose votes. That's what happens when the party has more votes on the other side. Right. Congressional Democrats have made a fair amount of headway anyway. They've held protests. They've held shadow hearings. They've used delaying tactics. These Epstein emails were released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, followed, as you pointed out, by Republicans to try to get ahead of the wave that's coming.
Yes.
What's more, media and lots of rank-and-file voters expect, correctly or not, in this case not, for Congress to be the focus of opposition. It's not.
It's not?
It's a party resistance. That means voters and other things and no kings and a whole bunch of other stuff. Congress is not the focus. It's the courts. It's everything.
Okay. It's a thought.
That's not just rationalizing after the fact. That's the way it works. No-win situation.
All right. That is how it works. We'll yell it. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with our discussion. Actually, during the break, we had this little additional discussion. There's still more to do here about the filibuster and other things, but
yeah, I just want to wrap up by saying there's really some nuanced arguments on both sides. Nobody's completely wrong, and yeah, people are angry, but the reason they're angry is they don't really care about whether the government opens or not, or whether the Affordable Care Act was subsidies were fixed on this bill or the next one to come. They want to defeat Trump and get him out of office, and you simply can't do that with the tools we have available at the moment. You can't. The only recourse really is to oppose as much as possible in and out of Congress, and then have an election like we had last Tuesday, only make it for the entire House and a good portion of the Senate. Mm-hmm. And that's the only recourse, and you're going to have to wait until then, and it sucks, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Now eat your food adjacent slop.
Yum. All right.
So let's talk about polling. CJ Warnke notes the data this week from multiple pollsters shows a clear trend. Trump is sinking. Rasmussen, Trump disapproval hits 54%, highest of his second term. Morning Consult, Trump's approval rating his second term low. Lowest numbers he's reached in his second term. Emerson, Trump's approval has flipped since January. Why it was positive in January, I don't know. Yeah, I know he was just elected, but still. This morning, AP Norc poll out. President Trump's approval, disapprove 62, approve 36.
Okay.
Everybody wanted to see it below 40. It's only propped up by some of the Republican-leaning pollsters, the ones who thought that Mikey Sherrill was going to win by 1 point. President Trump's approval now 36%. Democrats 94-4 disapprove. Republicans 74-23 approve. That means 23% of Republicans disapprove of his performance right now. That is notable. Independents 71-28. Those are bad numbers. Yeah. And as Nick Field points out, AP finds Trump 34 points underwater on the economy, 15 points underwater on immigration. These are supposed to be his strong points. This is supposedly what he got elected on.
Yes, supposedly.
I say supposed because Greg Sargent pointed out something interesting, which I had been thinking for a while. And that is that this is a lot of bait and switch stuff. Anti's choice president.
Yeah.
So the thing is, he's running on the economy. He pretends to moderate at various and sundry times. He knows you're unhappy with Biden for the election. He says, I can do better on the economy. The economy under me before the pandemic, so therefore anything that happened after that I'm not responsible for, was great. And it can be great again. And so reelect me and we'll go back to where we were. Then he wins by a really small amount, popular vote.
Right.
And then, and it's even smaller than you remember because California's still counting. And so when the final votes finally come in, he only wins by 1.5 points. And what happens? He gets in, he says, I have a mandate. What people really wanted is me to kick everybody who wasn't born here as a white Afrikaner. I'm sending them somewhere. Yes. I can't send them home because I don't even care where home is. I'll send them to El Salvador.
Yeah.
Wherever you're from. Unless you're from El Salvador, in which case I'll send you to Venezuela or maybe Uganda. I don't know. I'll pick a country. But whatever it is,
he needs my
people
wheel.
Elected me to do that, he asserts incorrectly. Yes. And that's the bait and switch. He was not elected on unease about the border.
Okay.
He thinks, because he was. It was unease about the border. He was elected, he claims, to throw everybody who's not a white Afrikaner out of the country. Yes. And I have a mandate to do it because I won big. And
Huge.
That's garbage.
Yes. Clear.
And it turns out that now you have all these people, you have Democrats who say, I didn't elect him to do this. I didn't even vote for him. But you have his own voters saying, this isn't what I voted for. The famous line that, Trump voters are unhappy keeps saying. Because it's true. It isn't what they voted for, even though he claims it is. Now, there is a section, a subsection, a 30% fascist section, a 30% racist section of the Republican Party who did want this.
Yep. That's
true. They heard what they heard. They knew. They're groypers.
Yeah.
But the rest of the country is not like that. And it's not a third of the country. It's a third of Republicans.
Right. And I don't know, they all work at the Heritage Foundation, if you're thinking about
and a third of 20% isn't all that many. It's just, it's not a huge component, but they're the ones running the country because Stephen Miller's president. So because of all of that,
yes,
this anti-choice, sell it to you stuff works for a little while. Then when your tongue turns black after having eaten this slop for a week because it's food adjacent and flavor adjacent, then you go, maybe I'll sell it to somebody else. It's the only way. 34 points underwater on the economy, 15 points underwater on immigration. It doesn't last. And as Greg Sargent says, some Democrats and pundits overread Trump's win, and I would say Republicans as well. They looked at dissatisfaction with the border and discerned a seismic cultural reaction to immigration. The former was real, the dissatisfaction. The latter is a mirage. There's no grand realignment.
Okay.
So that sets up a very unpopular president. Why and how does being unpopular play into, what Congress does? And the answer is, a popular president of your own party will force you to do things you don't want to do. An unpopular president of your own party has limits.
Yes. Okay.
And that's what we're going to see with the Epstein files. This is a July poll from Navigator. I sent you the graphic just because it's so good. And the title of the little graphic is Americans Continue to Hear More Negative on Trump. His handling of the Epstein files dominates across party lines. And it's one of those, if you hear negative or mixed news stories about Trump, in a few words, what negative things have you seen, read, heard recently? See. What negative things do you hear about Donald Trump? And for Democrats, for independents and Republicans, you've seen these word clouds.
Yeah.
Where the larger the word in the cloud, the more negative things you're hearing.
Yes.
For Democrats, you're hearing immigration, little letters, health, little letters, big beautiful bill, little letters, tariffs, bigger, huge, dominating, Epstein.
Yeah. Everybody's hating Epstein. And by the
way, for independents.
Yeah.
Big beautiful bill. Tariffs are a little bit bigger for independents than for Democrats even.
Yeah.
Negative stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Huge.
Epstein. There it is. Right. And in lowercase letters, appropriately enough.
Right. That's Republicans. Well, remember, Chaz Nutticum says you want to reach Gen Z, you got to write in all lowercase. Oh. That's how you have to write poll questions. Republicans, big beautiful bill, small letters, tariffs. It's funny. The people who heard the most negative things about tariffs are independents, followed by Republicans, followed by Democrats.
Okay.
Democrats had the least strong reaction to negative stuff about tariffs.
Interesting.
But dominating all three, Epstein.
Also bad news for Navigator itself, apparently.
Overall, 42% say they've seen, read, or heard a lot about the Justice Department's handling of the Epstein files, with 66% saying they've heard at least some.
How could you not? Come on.
That's the background.
Yeah.
So Melanie Zanona reports, breaking after being sworn in, Representative Adelita for Arizona.
Yeah, I guess she's got to switch that soon.
Signed the Epstein discharge petition. Well, you have your own personal one, and then you have your official account.
Yeah.
So you don't have to switch.
She wasn't official yet. She didn't have one.
Couldn't be official. Grijalva, she has to do the job of Congress of having an office and staff.
Right.
Telephones and all that stuff.
So after she was sworn in,
she signed the Epstein discharge petition, becoming the 218th signature.
Frozen. Yes.
You know what's interesting?
What?
If it's frozen, is it technically going to be 219? And I asked that because Don Bacon, the guy from Omaha, Nebraska, moderate Republican, is retiring, says he'll sign it. That's important because had any of the four Republicans who signed it pulled out, he could have replaced them.
Yes, that's true. Right.
And even if it's just a threat, it freezes the situation. Just as having an unpopular president who tries to put last-minute pressure on those four Republicans, that's where the limits of being a president of your own party come in.
Yeah.
So Melanie Zanona writes, despite last-minute White House pressure campaign, all four Republicans stayed on. That includes Nancy Mace, who arguably is tied or in first or second place for the most mentally disturbed Republican in the House. And her only competition is Victoria Sparks from Indiana.
Oh, I keep
who changes her mind every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Nancy Mace is damaged in a different way. And, she could have pulled out, and the pressure on her was tremendous. But Don Bacon froze that by declaring he would have signed.
Yeah, that's a good play. Interesting.
Very good play. And then, of course, all those unpopular polls come in, and the party's looking at this and saying, this is going to come out anyway. Remember what I told you the other day?
No.
And so this article in Politico, Republicans expecting mass defections on the Epstein vote.
Yes, that I remember.
Democrats pushing the discharge petition. That's out this morning. They said what I said last week. Democrats pushing the discharge petition predicted Republicans would rush to support the measure once it hits the floor, perhaps as many as 100.
Yeah, probably. Provided it gets there. Would they sign the discharge petition? No, because that's an internal party fighting thing and it gets you in trouble. But if you make me vote on it and I have to choose one or the other, there's going to be a number who say, I'm against that. I mean,
Now,
there's that whole pedophile thing.
here's my two technical points.
Mhm.
One's a point, one's a question. This is more of a statement than a question.
Oh. Oh, boy. All right, well, we're out of time. The panel has to leave. Yes.
Tim Burchett
Hmm.
had offered a competing discharge petition at one point.
Okay.
And what
Lost
I don't
to
have
history.
all that information in front of me. My vague memory was the reason that Democrats didn't support it is that in Tim Burchett's version,
Let's take
it
a
would
look.
be a unanimous consent. Let's just release the file thing. Democrats
What?
wanted to hold Republicans accountable because they figured it wouldn't pass, and they wanted to be on record that they voted against it. So they said no. They did the Tom Massey version
Yes.
with Democratic support.
Okay.
And I thought that was interesting. Somebody made that observation. I don't have all the details in front of me to go through
I don't
it.
have any. I don't see any.
But there
discharge
was at one
petition
point
in
an
front of
effort by
me.
Burchett to do this, but it wasn't what the Democrats wanted because it wouldn't. It would conceal who voted for what.
Okay. I don't even see it as a petition. Could it have
It didn't
been
go
in the
anywhere because
last...
there was no support.
All right. So, but it wasn't even filed. I mean, lots of
No,
people filed
no, it was
discharge
offered
petitions.
verbally, and people said, "Yeah, no, thanks."
Okay. All right. So, right. It stayed off the record.
So
Interesting.
instead, this goes. So now they pass it, and my question is, why are people
passed it
writing
yet.
that they get to vote on this in early December? Why is it taking so long?
All right. Well, we started to try and explain the convoluted process by which they actually get their vote. And the short version of it was, okay, so the 218th signature goes on, everything is frozen, and then at that point, the proponent of the bill gets an opportunity at some point, not before the 7th legislative day following the 218th signature. That is also either the 2nd or 4th Monday of the month, at which point they can then make a motion for consideration of the underlying measure that has been discharged. And then the speaker has a very short window after that, about 48 hours, to schedule a vote. After this motion is made, we now discharge the committees or any committees from consideration of this bill.
So it's the 2nd or 4th Monday of the month that's really holding all of this up because it was filed last night. It is a HRES 581.
Yeah, it's a right. Okay, so the
discharge petition number 9. Interestingly, that must be of this 119th Congress,
like Mahler's 9.
and that means the other 8 failed, right?
They're still out there pending, But yeah, usually
they haven't succeeded.
Almost all discharge petitions fail to get 218.
But on the 9th try,
he
rested.
Great for the symphony and great for everything. So HR 185 is actually the discharge of the rule for consideration of an underlying.
581 for those of you looking it up at home.
That's interesting too because yes, right. It's HRES 5. That's interesting. So dyslexia strikes again. I think we mentioned this last time. It's HRES 581 would be the rule under which they consider the bill that would itself force the release, allegedly, of the alleged Epstein files by the alleged Justice Department. And what's interesting, HRES 581 is the rule for HR 185. Like I said, sure to tie dyslexics and knots forever. I don't know why that happened or how it happened, just by coincidence.
The bill is 185, but the rule is to
581.
consider is 581.
Anyway, so what they're discharging is the rule. That way the Rules Committee doesn't mess with the underlying measure.
And who is the sponsor?
That's Massey.
Yes, Thomas Massey is the one pushing this.
He's the Massey
can these have more than one sponsor? I thought there was like a Democratic
one lead
co-sponsor.
sponsor, and then everybody else you could be co-sponsors. You can sign on as co-sponsors.
Right. Okay, so the sponsor's Massey. So this is a Republican deal here.
Yeah, right. And, if you need this kind of cover, a bipartisan effort. And I have seen it referred to
that's what
that
you
way.
can say, but I'm looking at the writing here, and if you're only going to be a strict textualist, I'm saying it was a Republican that put this petition in, and a president of your own party was not popular enough to change your mind.
Right. Of course, Thomas Massey, also a little wacky, but
Well, yes, but he doesn't compete
predictable
with Nancy
wacky.
Mace and Victoria
no,
Sparks.
he's a different kind of wacky, a roguish, independent streak maverick kind of wacky, as opposed to I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and I don't know what day it is, which is the other
Now,
ones.
In the
Yeah.
remaining time, perhaps we should mention
Yes.
that there were some new emails released yesterday
Right.
by the Democrats,
yeah.
followed by the Republicans.
Right. Okay. True.
Aaron Blake
Who cares,
read some
though,
of them
right?
and
Forget
said,
it.
here's
Yeah.
the key context surrounding the new 2011 and 2019 Epstein emails. Most
Epstein,
notable,
I didn't know. Okay.
Epstein cited Trump's knowledge of Maxwell recruiting girls at Mar-a-Lago.
Mm-hmm.
That was in there.
Yeah.
At a time when the Trump Department of Justice was starting to look at Epstein's sweetheart deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he writes Maxwell and says, Trump's the dog that didn't bark.
Mm-hmm.
He knows about this.
Yeah. It was.
And all of a sudden, Trump DOJ backs off looking at Epstein's sweetheart. I'm just saying, coincidence?
Yeah. Right. There was an awful lot. And the whole day, I don't know what the dynamics of this thing was. I guess there was a huge dump of emails, and Kyle Cheney and a couple other reporters just basically spent the day as they found things. They were just reading them one at a time, and then they would
and they were
breaking.
picking the three worst ones and putting them out there, which I love. And
It's fine.
what happens? You get those word clouds with Epstein being by far the
believe
biggest
me,
thing.
there's nothing
here.
wrong with that. And
Nothing wrong
they're
with it.
genuine. And it was a long. And then I guess a couple other reporters then realized, oh, you mean you're just reading these things one by one? And so then they started doing it. Somebody built a database that was searchable so that you could immediately find exactly the names you were looking for. Everybody's in it. Yeah, it was a real bonanza.
Didn't Pam Bondi say that Trump's name isn't in these files?
Probably she did say that. And now remind
No
you,
reason to release them. I just need to protect the innocent.
Yeah.
And Trump's name isn't even there.
Two things.
Those
about
are two
that.
separate things: the innocent
Right.
and Trump's name.
That's true. And also two separate things. One, Pam Bondi is almost certainly lying. And
Well, they all
two,
lie.
that the files, remember, these things that we saw yesterday are things that didn't even rise to the level of extreme disgustingness and evidence of guilt that the DOJ has got. The DOJ's files that Tom Massey and the 218 members of Congress are trying to release is an entirely different set of documents than we saw yesterday. And everybody was shocked and appalled by what we saw yesterday, with a few people reminding us the really juicy stuff was snapped up by the DOJ, and they're sitting on that. So things will get worse.
But wait.
All right. Well, all right.
We
We
and the House Oversight Committee, but the people in the People's House do not have access to what the DOJ has, correct?
Not currently. I do not think so. Right.
But-
yeah. That's why the discharge petition. Yes. But
The DOJ has access to what the House Oversight Committee released.
that's true.
Okay, why is that relevant?
Well,
Asher
do they?
Rangappa says, you remember that
Probably.
interview that Todd Blanche, Trump's former lawyer who now works at DOJ, had with Ghislaine Maxwell before she got her sweetheart camp, summer camp placement in Texas with preferred meals and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, like an airline. Who ordered the gluten-free prison food? Oh, that's me.
Asha
Really?
Rangappa writes, Todd Blanche would have had these emails before interviewing Maxwell. Why didn't he question her directly about these exchanges? Why did he not follow up when she said things that were obviously a lie, like Trump's not even in these? This shows that this was a performance intended to dupe the public and benefit her and Trump.
Yes, probably. Although again,
In
this
a previous
in court.
world, Blanche would resign in disgrace and perhaps be prosecuted.
Yeah, well,
That's not the world we live in. But I'm just saying,
no.
this is so blatant. I mean,
I think
his
so.
reputation was in the gutter before.
Yeah.
It's lower than that now. It's in the sewer
There's
now.
room for him. If we're prosecuting him for it, we're not. I mean, if we lived in a world where they prosecuted for him, there is still room for the Mike Johnson play. I didn't read them. I don't know about them. They were available. I could have asked for them.
So you're
I
either
didn't.
incompetent or you're a liar.
Yes, but I can't prosecute you for
Either way, your
incompetence.
reputation is gone.
That's true. And most people would have saved everybody the trouble. But if you have to do it by I mean, you probably end up resigning because if we're trying to get rid of you by prosecuting the deputy attorney general while he's the sitting deputy attorney general, my effectiveness is a little bit diminished by this. I should probably leave. But yeah, it's possible he'll say, I didn't read them. I didn't know what they said.
Right. My favorite fan response to that one
Too long
from the general public on Twitter was, listen, I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a conspiracy observer.
Okay. Conspiracy adjacent. Right.
This is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And Trump is leading it, and Todd Blanche's lawyer is setting it up.
Yeah.
And guess what? The worst is coming, but this is already hurting them. And should Democrats play this up? Well, let's just say I think the theory that the Epstein files are just going to go away and it's not really going to bother us and like nobody's even talking about, I think that's not working out the way they intended.
No. And by the way, I have noticed this. I don't know how much trust to put in any of this because remember, in the end, this is the correspondence of a vicious, lying pedophile.
Right.
So, I mean, and I think it also seems to me that an emerging theme about this is Epstein has absolutely evidences an intense interest in saying, oh, yeah, well, they're going to do this to me. Well, fine. I'm going to get Trump and everybody else. And this was always his plan was, blackmail stuff. I'm going to make sure that this stuff happens to you. Interestingly, and I get not so interestingly now that we see how incompetent he is in terms of spelling and self-expression, he was not able to make any of those things happen, which is interesting. So kind of his whole world fell apart there. But somewhere in there, the narrative defying information of the day, I guess, is that somewhere in all of this, Epstein emails somebody and says, Bill Clinton never came to my island. What are you guys talking about? Which I thought was underplayed from the day's revelations.
Well, that's exactly the information the Republicans didn't want to release.
Yeah, that seems to be. Now, everybody in the progressive Democratic world dealing with Epstein has been ready since forever to say, if he went, and I don't care. We jettisoned him along with everything else. But interesting thing to put down an email. No, you didn't. You didn't go to my. Now, that could be a lie as well, but it was an interesting find and sets an entire decade's worth of narrative on its head.
Yes. So we're going to wind up talking about Epstein for a while. I think their ploy has failed. And so the next thing, maybe it's going to take until the fourth Monday of the month where the Jets win. And so it can't be until December because the Jets won. So that part's,
it's definitely sounding like they're going to take till December. And by the way, there are some weird things that they could do if they want to.
Yes. And they may or may not want to because this is like the Republicans. I mean, the voters, the Republican voters want to see this. So their hands are tied a little bit by that.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Johnson.
One other thing I wanted to get in there before the end of my segment, though, because we're closing in on the end.
No, we're not. Go.
Still got 3 minutes, but that's relatively small.
There's some things we can do procedurally. Go on.
Donald Trump said, "I want the money to go directly to you with this ACA stuff. You'll go out and buy your own health insurance. You'll negotiate different plans. You will be an entrepreneur for yourself." That's his grand plan.
Yeah. No one wants
from a guy who doesn't understand anything. And one observer said, "Oh, I get it. It's like instead of firehouses and fire stations and fire departments, we'll give everybody a hose."
Yeah, that's essentially it.
You figure it out.
People who do not want this to happen. But, Mr. Deals thinks he can make a deal on everything.
Andy's choice.
Yeah.
Andy's choice president says, "We'll sell you a deal you can't refuse." It doesn't cost very much. It covers everything until you get sick.
Yeah. And,
it's Anthony's choice.
Eventually, the idea is, right. I know you all can't wait for this freedom. All you have to do is, here's the money. Go negotiate with providers for a good rate. Just, you're sick while you're negotiating with them. By the way, that's you in a shutdown situation, by the way, where the doctor says, "I'm just not going to provide that care." I mean, hopefully doctors won't do that. But the doctor's management says, "We're not going to provide that care until you pay X for it. And we're holding out. And if you die before we reach a deal, you die."
New, improved with free illnesses. If you get sick, it's free.
All right. Yeah, no,
We
this
won't
has been
charge
tried
you for
before.
being sick.
This is an extremely old idea as well, and it's been trashed every time it's come up. The health savings account, or the idea that you can negotiate with nationwide networks of providers while you're ill, is ridiculous, and there's nothing new under the sun here. This has been a terrible idea since forever, and it's not even his idea on top of it being terrible. So get rid of this guy. Don't listen to this, and I don't think anybody's going to be tempted by that at this point.
Right.
Good.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's the news. That's fits.
That's the one that fits.
We talked about it.
Okay. By the way, back to the discharge petition thing. So they
Yes,
are going to
please.
vote in December is the spoken plan. And I have no reason to believe that Mike Johnson wants to delay it any further or do any more blocking for Trump, but he may take him to a wrestling match or something and change his mind. So if under normal, regular order, they're going to vote on this thing in December, I remind you that at the with the end of December, and of course all the recesses we're going to have in between Thanksgiving, and then of course the December holidays will be cause for recess as well. The end of the first session of the 19th Congress is coming up. We're on pocket veto watch. If they really want to do something, a special gift for President Trump, we keep saying, well, Trump will veto the legislation anyway. He will, but then he'll suffer the consequences politically, and he will, that too. But if they delay long enough and just say, we're ready to go, but it's just not the fourth Monday. I'm sorry, we're going to have to wait for that. And push it into December. Something goes wrong with the second Monday. Now the fourth Monday is the 23rd of December, and we know what's coming up around that time. And they go on recess. The Senate goes on recess. If they push it such that the Senate doesn't get it early enough and they elect to, jump out of the way and pass this thing, then it goes to the president for signature or veto. But if it happens within 10 days of the adjournment sine die of the first session of Congress, he can make a plausible claim at pocket vetoing it. That is to say, not only will I not sign it, I will also not sign a veto message either, but at being the end of the session, it just disappears. I didn't veto it, I just didn't sign it.
Senate has to pass it, and he'll still get killed politically for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him getting killed politically for it, but did I sign it? No. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I tried to force that one in at the end, and I think most of the listeners will probably have some residual memory of pocket vetoes and how they work. Does everybody get what I'm saying? I think if everything goes according to plan, let's see. First of all, I guess the caution is I have no particular reason to think that Mike Johnson wants to do this favor for Donald Trump, though he may ask for it because it's it's something annoying. So Donald Trump may ask for it. But as we said, 7 legislative days following the 218th signature on the petition, you have your first opportunity to make the motion to take up the discharged matter. The discharged matter, once again, for dyslexics, being H-Res 581, which is a rule providing for the consideration of H.R. 185, which is the bill that, if passed by the House and the Senate and it becomes law, however you look at it, would allegedly force the DOJ to release this thing. And I think, read the underlying bill at one point. And, in this day and age, you have to throw out the caveat of there's the possibility that the DOJ, on Donald Trump's orders or otherwise, just says we're not going to comply with the law, sue us, and no one has standing to do anything or whatever. But there, any number of things could happen in that direction. But in addition to that, there are shenanigans you can play that would provide minimal but available shielding to Donald Trump. Right? So 7 legislative days have to pass. And everybody remembers, but might need a reminder of how it happens, that the House and Senate both frequently take advantage of the opportunity for them to manipulate the time-space continuum by pretending that calendar days are not the same thing as legislative days. And, well, that they don't have to pretend to do. But what I mean by this is you and I think, well, 7 legislative days means 7 days after the 218th signature is applied to the paper, parchment. It's not really parchment, but to the paper there. And that happened on November 12th. That was yesterday. So normal people then say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days later is November 19th. But then you say, oh, well, what does that mean? Legislative days. Let's say, okay, as is normally the case, the House does not meet, except perhaps in pro forma session, on the 14th, which is a Friday, or the 15th, Saturday, or the 16th, Sunday. And quite frankly, they don't often meet on Monday, the 17th either. Does that mean that today, the 13th, is legislative day number 1, but legislative day number 2 doesn't come until Tuesday, the 18th, possibly? And then again, Wednesday, Thursday, let's say they take off again on Friday, so that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 legislative days, takes us to November 20th, then off for the weekend, and then maybe the 5th legislative day is November 25th. But then the 6th legislative day is Wednesday, the 26th. But guess what? Actually, maybe they don't even meet on the 25th because they're basically off for Thanksgiving at that point. But let's say they meet on Tuesday and then take off early Wednesday. And let's say they even count that as a legislative day. That's 6 legislative days. They're definitely not going to be meeting on Thursday, Thanksgiving, probably not Friday either. They'll be out encouraging people to shop. The 29th and 30th go by. December 1st is Monday, probably not coming back Monday, maybe Tuesday. Then they're talking, okay, now it's early December. That will be the 7th legislative day, if they don't do anything weird or goofy, right? But that day is December 2nd, Tuesday, and we're looking for the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month. The December 8th is the 2nd Monday of the month, so there is that. The 4th Monday of the month is December 22nd. I think I accidentally said it was the 23rd. And clearly you're looking at Christmas at that point. And of course, by the way, Hanukkah beginning December 15th, they very frequently will give, for a situation like this, give themselves both of those weeks and including New Year's off. It could be the case, in other words, that by December 11th or so, let's say December 12th, Friday, they are out of there for the end of the year and not coming back until early January when they reconvene for the second session. But, there's plenty of opportunity to have 7 legislative days in there. Now we remind everybody that if at the end of the day's proceedings, the chair or it's the speaker or his designee elects to adjourn the House, that will flip things over until, I think, do I have it all right? Adjourning the House at the end of the day flips things over to the next day they convene as a new legislative day. But the trick, again, is if you instead recess the House subject to the call of the chair and simply call the House back to order at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 the next day, whenever it's going to be, the choice of mechanism for suspending activity on the House floor, adjournment versus recess, is what determines whether or not the legislative calendar turns over into the next legislative day. Can you, for days and days and calendar days and calendar days and calendar days, months if you want, at the end of the day's proceedings, suspend activity subject to the call of the chair in a recess rather than an adjournment? Yes, absolutely. Have they ever done it? Sure, for various reasons all the time. Usually reasons having to do with we want to delay the consideration of something. Like maybe, I don't know, this discharge petition. So what can they do? Even without delaying too much, without any trickery, you find yourself waiting for, what was it, December 8th to take up or to give Thomas Massie his first opportunity to come to the floor and say, all right, we discharged the petition. The 7 legislative days have passed. It's the second Monday of the month. It's discharge day. You know, you haven't heard much about this because we haven't read you the full CRS report about it, but I guess we could turn our attention to that. But this is the distillation of that. December 8th, he says, there we go. Then that starts the clock for the speaker. He's under the gun. He has 2 legislative days, or, well, not 2 legislative days. I'm sorry. He's about 2 calendar days, 48 hours or so. We'll have to read the rule again about that, but it's generally held to be about 2 days. That means a December, well, let's see, let's say December 10th, and depending on the timing, I don't know what time of day Massie would be entitled to do this, but presumably he wants to do it right away. So Wednesday, December 10th, the House takes up first consideration of HRes 581. They can do it all in the same day. They'll have an hour of debate for that. Then they'll get, I don't know what the rule says, how long they get to debate HR 185, but probably not all that long. They can all finish, I presume that they can finish it all up in one day. December 10th, the House has passed it. They now message it over to the Senate. Now, I don't know how long the Senate has, and I don't know whether there's any controlling from the House side when the Senate takes the thing up. But if the Senate, let's say, doesn't take it up immediately, and, you know, there'll be a lot of political pressure to do so, and I don't know that they're going to try anything like this. We're looking at about December 11th, and they could probably let it slide for a day and say, we're taking off for the weekend, right? Or under normal circumstances. But if you're also looking at, well, we're also not coming back on December 15th, and I don't know whether we're coming back the week of the 15th or not. Are we taking all the time off for Hanukkah? Usually you don't have to go ahead and do that. Maybe you might come in later in the week with Hanukkah starting and people wanting to be back in their districts for various events or whatever. But let's say they come back during the next week and they start to consider it. I mean, the normal way of doing things, a hot potato like this, they want to get it over with, and they would pass the thing, and they'd be kind of under the gun to make sure that they got it dispatched to the White House before the end of the week, because by the following week, the 4th Monday, which maybe doesn't come into it because they've taken care of things, and only the House cares about which Monday it is in all of this. But it is Christmas week. It's the week of December 22nd, Monday, through the 26th, Kwanzaa, on Friday, there. Now, the House and Senate both will enter a new session, right? There are 2 sessions for each Congress, a year long. So on January 3rd, the second session begins. And very frequently, it's only a matter of a formality that the first session of Congress will end on January 3rd, that morning, minutes, if not seconds, before the second session begins. But there is technically a little break in there, and you got the pocket veto looming. Does everybody remember the pocket veto rule? The pocket veto rule, regular veto rules, they can send you legislation, the president can veto it, it gets messaged back to Congress, and with a 2/3 vote, they could override his veto. That would be a very sticky situation for a lot of things, for a lot of reasons, a lot of Republicans. And it may very well end up being the case that he's so unpopular and so damaged by the Epstein thing by the time this thing comes back that they do override his veto. Difficult to believe, but they could. I mean, if you got 100 Republicans, particularly and very often they'll be sending the message, please God, don't make me vote on a veto override of Donald J. Trump and just have to live with his rabid cuckoo fans threatening my family and or bombing my office, right? We don't want that. And so they may want to send that message as soon as possible. So like if we're voting on this thing in the House on December 10th or so, if you're asking yourself, why would 100 Republicans come out in defiance of Donald Trump? If the answer for you, if it isn't enough to say, God, it's the disgustingness of Epstein and they do not want this to stick to them, so they'll come out and cast that vote. In addition, they will want to come out and cast that vote so that it looks like a veto-proof majority. And, you never know what that really means. But it looks like a veto-proof majority is sending this thing to the president's desk. And a normal president and a normal presidential advisor will say, sir, tears streaming down their eyes, it has arrived on our desk with a veto-proof majority, by which we mean, we assume that if this was sent back to them with a veto message, that the same members who voted for it the first time would agree to vote for it the second time. A valid assumption, but just as is the case with discharge petitions, where you might in fact find, what if you find 300 members of the House voting in favor of this thing? Well, only 218 of you signed it. Yeah, because the discharge petition is a different act and is regarded differently by the party apparatus inside the House. Similarly, voting the same way on a veto override is viewed as a different thing by your party and your president, especially if he's a vindictive bastard of a president who might send people to bomb your office. He'll consider a veto override to be a different thing than voting for it the first time. Sure, you voted for it the first time, but now you're considering it in light of my wanting to kill you if you vote to override my veto. That will change some votes too. So what is the monkey business that they could do? Well, like I said, the House and the Senate both might want very badly to send the message, we will override your veto. And with that in mind, the president might be thinking, well, if you send me this bill, I have, under the Constitution, 10 days, 10 business days. I think they exclude Sundays still, archaically enough, in the counting of the days. But here they use calendar days, not legislative days. You got 10 days to decide what to do with the bill. Your normal two options are, well, your normal three options. Everybody forgets the third option because they don't bother with it very often. But you can sign the bill, in which case it becomes law. That's what they did with the reopening bill, the CR, last night. You can veto the bill and send it back to Congress with a message giving your best explanation as to why you rejected it, although you don't really have to do that. And then the House and Senate both get a chance to override your veto. Or you can, if you are within 10 days of the end of the session, there is this danger. Oh, I forgot. The third option, under normal circumstances, forget about what time of year it is you can just say, I don't know, I lost it. I flushed the bill down the toilet, I chewed it up, I spat it out into a garbage can, whatever might be the case. I didn't do anything. And the founders, in their wisdom, putting together the Constitution, said, we can envision this happening. A president who really doesn't like this thing. Well, you can't just sit on it forever and not sign it. After 10 days, even if you don't sign it, it becomes law. So you can sign it and be gracious. You can veto it and send it back affirmatively. I really don't think this should become law. Or you could say, I don't like this thing, but so I'm not going to sign it, but I'm not going to stand in the way of it becoming law either. Right. So if you are, however, at the end of the session, you can do the pocket veto. And that's sort of an invention of circumstance here, right? If you wait 10 days, ordinarily it becomes law anyway. But if the Congress adjourns such that if you later decide, I am going to reject this thing and I am going to veto it, and I'm going to send my veto message back to the Congress, but the Congress is adjourned and can't receive your message, well then, especially if they are adjourning sine die, as they say, at the end of the session, in the olden days that meant they would be gone for a very, very, very long time. In current practice, adjournment sine die is followed almost immediately by reconvening the second session. So it doesn't make any sense, but there it is. So if they delay things in the House by playing around with legislative days, or they don't, and they send this thing to the Senate, but the Senate doesn't immediately move to its consideration. It may be that they find that the bill, though passed overwhelmingly and perhaps with a veto-proof majority, arrives on the president's desk within 10 days of adjournment sine die of the first session of the 119th Congress. Trump does nothing. He doesn't veto it. You can't say it. Please don't print in a newspaper that I vetoed it. I didn't veto it. But I'm not going to sign this thing, certainly. And then, whoops, this time, at this particular time of year, not signing it and then waiting your 10 days means the opposite of waiting 10 days and not signing anything any other time of year. Poof, it's gone. It's been vetoed, but pocket vetoed. I didn't veto it. You can't show me the signature. You know I love to sign things. You know I love to scribble it in big black marker. You're not going to find a document with my name on it that says it's a veto message. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. In reality, he did. You pocket vetoed it. Everybody knows what's going to happen. You can still blame him for it, but he's going to run around saying, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Is that stupid? Yeah. So what? Trump's pretty stupid. Is that enough reason to go through the trouble? I don't know what he thinks. Maybe he thinks it is. If Stephen Miller tells him it is, what would the end result be? You'd be back to square one. Could Thomas Massie reintroduce the same measure with a discharge petition immediately? Yes, absolutely. Could he count on getting the same 218 signatures? No, probably not if they went through it this way. I mean, would Nancy Mace sign it again? Maybe. I don't know. Would Murdery Trader Green sign it again? Yeah, maybe. Thomas Massie certainly would. Would they get Lauren Boebert on it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Could they just start it all over again? And could it be a huge embarrassment because right away in January they're able to do this and then send it right back to the president and force him to either sign it or veto it? Yeah, that's a risk they take. But, does that bother the president and his staff when they think like legitimately one of the tools we have in our pocket for this is sending people to physically threaten members of Congress and bomb their offices? That might not bother those kinds of guys. So be on the lookout for it. I don't think it, is worth the game at this point. And it's more likely that Trump might prefer to just veto it outright and say, I defy you to override me. But then they might do that. A pocket veto affords no opportunity for an override. And that might be something he'd be interested in setting up for himself. So there you have it. They don't even really have to delay all that long in order to make it work. But they could, and it would be an easy thing to do just by recessing rather than adjourning. Though they did not recess last night, so no indication so far that they're going to do it, but they could wait until the 6th legislative day to start doing that and just do it from then on. Now, what protections do you have against that? That's something I guess I should note for you. And I guess if I was reading you, I have a more recent version of the CRS report on discharge petitions available. I had doubts about whether the 2005 version was really up to date because my recollection was that I read somewhere that there was another discharge petition and possibly in the current or near adjacent Congress, a Republican-controlled Congress. I thought I saw something about Anna Paulina Luna, right, having a discharge petition that actually succeeded, but they worked their way around having to worry about bringing that thing to the floor in some way, and that there might have been some rules changes. So the May 24th, 2018 version of CRS's discharge petitions and House discharge rules, after telling you about the whole second and third Monday thing, gets down to pointing out at some point that there is a mechanism by which the House can defend itself against screwing around with the legislative calendar if they are well and truly opposed to it. And it's simply this: if you have a working majority, you can do things like this. So let's say the fellowship of the discharge petition holds together, and they don't lose anybody along the way. And, of course, Mikey Sherrill is still around to do this. Raul Grijalva, he never signed the discharge petition because it was filed after he died. But other members of the House who have died or resigned since, if that is the case for anybody, then they're not around to cast this vote. But if the chair were to opt to recess the House, subject to the call of the chair, rather than adjourn it, and everybody knew that this was all about delaying, they could object to and vote against the motion to recess rather than adjourn, and instead insist on an adjournment so that the calendar day, or the legislative day, would flip over to a new one, simply by objecting to what would normally be a unanimous consent request because everybody's agreed to it. But if there's a motion to recess subject to the call of the chair, you can reject it and instead offer a motion to adjourn for the day. And if you hold your 218 together across the aisle, that would defeat the speaker's effort to do that. But you'd have to hold that team together. You'd have to have people who are Republicans who are in support of forcing the disclosure by the DOJ, or at least in favor of being on the record one day voting for it, but who say nonetheless, but I'm not going to cede procedural control of the floor to the Democrats on this one. I'm going to go along with my leadership. I'm still going to get to cast my vote that makes it look like I'm on the right side of history, even if I also know that this vote will put the president in control of being on the wrong side of history. They may very well split their votes that way. So I'm just putting it out there. That's one of the many things that can happen. So anyway, by the way, it does note that a discharge motion in the House may not be called up during the last 6 days of a session of Congress. And I think presumably because they had an eye on the pocket veto situation, but the House can call it up very late, just not in the last 6 days, and then hand it to the Senate. And I don't know what kind of rules the Senate has and how it deals with discharge petitions. It's not being discharged on their side, so they don't have that issue. It's only the House that's doing any discharge petition about it. So there you go. Lots of complications that could still happen. All right. I think now, though, probably time to switch gears and get on to some of the other news. And there's a lot of it. Some of it will be about Epstein also. And so we definitely have that to deal with. The New York Times, by the way, offered its own take on, what do they call it? What's behind the coming House vote on releasing the Epstein files? And then I guess probably their version of the explainer of discharge rules. We could take a look at that, but I think we've done enough on that. However, I guess by way of short stories to share before the third break. Some of these Epstein ones are actually pretty long, but I'll at least note that there was a Politico story that was generated by the review of some of those emails released yesterday. Jeffrey Epstein claimed he gave Russians insight into Trump. And there's a lot in the people are sort of deciphering from the dumped emails that I guess stands behind the weird and not entirely fleshed out theory that Jeffrey Epstein, among the many people that he manipulated with blackmail or whatever, that he had relationships with one or more countries' intelligence establishments, and that it may have been the case that his sweetheart deal on his first conviction came about as a result of the fact that he has these intelligence connections and may have been a confidential informant that they just didn't want to keep locked up in the general prison population. Who knows? But he's got relationships with intelligence operatives, certainly, around the country. So now this is a new one for me. I'd heard about a rumored connection to the Israeli Mossad, but I had never really seen any serious evidence for it. But now that they're also discussing, well, maybe he was benefiting the intelligence community of the Russians in the middle of all this. Very interesting. Not sure exactly what to make of it, but it seems motivated by a desire to hurt Trump, which is, good on the one hand, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind that hurting Trump while he's president of the United States by talking to the Russians about him engenders a whole new set of problems for you. Espionage problems. Even though our president sucks, they're still the Russians. Jeffrey Epstein claimed he gave Russians insight into Trump. The subheader says, newly released emails show the late convicted sex offender's extensive network of foreign contacts whom he corresponded with about Trump's policy decisions. What's it mean? Let's come back to that in 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Oh my. Well, I was a little bit late in getting back to the microphone, but not before the music ended, or not after the music ended, but very damn close. So what do we have from Politico? Let's just add this. I think this is, I don't know whether it's potentially important, but it's potentially super weird. Kyle Cheney, one of the things he set to print after a day's worth of combing through the emails, joined by Nahal Tusi on this piece, nearly a month before President Donald Trump met Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. Remember that one? In 2018? He came out so weirdly deflated and depressed looking, and most people just think, yeah, Putin just ran roughshod over him, as he usually does at Helsinki. And but that's a sort of a turning point. People point to that all the time as like something weird and terrible happened there. He was just looking so uncharacteristically, well, maybe not uncharacteristically, defeated and deflated. Anyway, nearly a month before that meeting, Jeffrey Epstein attempted, for some reason, to pass a message to Russia's top diplomat. And maybe it was anodyne. I don't know. If you want to understand Trump, talk to me. Now, they would want to understand Trump. They might already have felt, we already understand Trump. We're already manipulating Trump. But, free advice, sure. Why not? Particularly if it comes with compromise. I think you might suggest to Putin, no capitals on that one, that Lavrov, no capitals, can get insight on talking to me, Epstein wrote in a June 24th, 2018 email to, holy mackerel, the former Prime Minister of Norway. Ready? Thorbjorn Jagland, I'm going to guess, is the pronunciation there. There's the diacritical remarks or marks that sometimes are either absent here because we just don't have them, or people don't know how to use those on the keyboard, or he doesn't use them in his name. I don't know. So Thorbjorn Jagland seems correct unless there's marks missing. A former Prime Minister of Norway, not the only one, of course, there are several, who was leading the Council of Europe at the time of the exchange. Lavrov was an apparent reference to Sergei Lavrov, Russia's longtime foreign minister. You all remember him, I think. In the email exchange, one of hundreds released Wednesday by congressional investigators, Epstein indicated he had previously talked about Trump with Vitaly Churkin, Russia's forceful ambassador to the United Nations, before Churkin died in 2017. Churkin was great, Epstein, the late convicted sex offender, wrote. Not really the eulogy I'm sure that Churkin was looking for, but okay. He understood Trump after our conversations. It's not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. And again, no punctuation, no capitalization. It's total garbage. He looks like an idiot, but we're trying to give it some kind of human reading by adding our own punctuation here. But that's basically it. So he must have had some sort of discussion at some point. He thought Churkin was great because Churkin at least appeared to indicate that he, valued Epstein's input and said, oh yeah, that's very helpful. So therefore Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. And if that's his description of Trump, and I assume it is, he's got to be seen to get something. And if he gets something, then he'll be satisfied with whatever deal you give him. That's certainly true. Probably would be considered an insight to Russians or any other foreign operator who basically, I'm sure for the first couple of years, was confused by Trump. I don't understand. No other president of the United States has ever operated this way. They were all smarter and better advised than that. Are you saying that he is as dumb as he appears to be facially and will actually operate on a policy level as that sort of simpleton? Because it's hard to believe. Yes, I assure you, with my inside knowledge of the way he operates, that is the case. Wow. Okay. Then that is valuable insight. I mean, I didn't think it was because it's obvious on its face. So we just assumed it wasn't true because most presidents, people who rise to this position, tend to hide the ball better than that. But okay. Sure. The exchange was among dozens that showcase Epstein's extraordinary network of international associates, whom he often corresponded with. Come on, guys. With whom he often corresponded. Whom he often corresponded with about Trump's first-term policy decisions. Blah. I think reading so many Jeffrey Epstein emails, damaged their brains, and now their quality of writing suffers from having done so. Trump later posted on Truth. Did I miss something? Yes, I did. A useless denial. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment about the emails, but Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said at a briefing Wednesday, the broader set of emails, quote, prove absolutely nothing other than President Trump did nothing wrong, unquote. Bye. Trump later posted on Truth Social, Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again. Republicans are, of course, doing that because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown. Trump has the opposite problem. He capitalizes everything. That's how different he is. That's how distant he really was from Jeffrey Epstein. He was referring, of course, to the U.S. government shutdown. In the emails, Yaglin said he was meeting Lavrov's assistant the following day and would suggest a connection with Epstein. It's unclear if anything ever came of the proposed contact. That they didn't commit to writing at some point, or at least not in the batch of emails that we saw. Maybe they did, because they were really careless about everything. Anyway, Epstein would later opine about Trump's fateful meeting with Putin, which was panned around the world for his apparent capitulations to the Russian dictator. Do the Russians have stuff on Trump? Today was appalling, even by his standards, wrote Larry Summers, who also comes off looking terrible in all of this, the former Clinton administration Treasury Secretary and Obama administration economic advisor, in an email to Epstein on July 16, 2018, the day of the Helsinki summit with Putin. My email is full with similar comments. Wow, Epstein replied the next day. I'm sure his view is that it went super well. And that's worth noting. That's something we mentioned in passing the other day. Trump, if remember, the comments were about, I'm worried that Trump thinks he won. It disgusts me. It makes it worse that Trump thinks he won the shutdown as a result of the capitulation to, this new CR. And while it's true and certainly make you sick to your stomach, I was telling people, you can't use that as your barometer. Trump always thinks he won, right? So don't let the fact that Trump thinks he won convince you that of anything. There may be 10,000 other reasons why it was wrong to give in on the shutdown, but the fact that Trump now thinks he won or learned a lesson from it about how to deal with Democrats is not one of them. It can't be. He never changes his mind on those things. The whole world saw how he looked after his meeting with Putin at Helsinki. And of course, everybody has panned it around the globe. But I think Epstein is right here that Trump probably still thinks that the summit went super well. He thinks he has charmed his adversary. Admittedly, he has no idea of the symbolism. He has no idea of most things. He also called Trump's handling of the summit with Putin predictable. Summers did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Days later, Epstein was flexing his overseas relationships in an email exchange with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. This I thought was interesting, telling him in a July 23, 2018 message that Bannon needed to be physically present in Europe to wield influence on that continent. I guess he was interested in doing so. If you are going to play here, and I guess he might have been writing from Europe at that point. If you're going to play here, you'll have to spend time. Europe by remote doesn't work, Epstein wrote. And that's probably actually pretty decent advice. I just found that interesting. No comment made on it as far as I can see by anybody else, but July 23rd, 2018, you need to be physically present in Europe in order to play here. And presumably the play is to manipulate European far-right parties as part of this international network of rightward swinging, fascist-leaning governments having one another's back in the middle of all this, for whatever that might be worth. And indications are there's plenty. But do you remember, is this about the time, July 23rd, 2018, about the time that Bannon made that weird play that we briefly talked about, I'm sure at the time, or maybe afterwards, that he made this brief play to occupy and establish at some Italian monastery, they're all historical Italian monasteries. This one, but he was going to establish some sort of, I don't know, think tank / international foundation for the training of essentially far right parties and their spokespeople and tacticians around Europe at this place. I mean, was this him saying, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein, pedophile extraordinaire, you're right. I do need to be physically present in Europe to do it, and I'm going to start trying to do it now. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make the plan any better or worse, I guess, by itself. But to link it with Epstein, and for Epstein to be giving him this kind of advice, don't give him advice. What are you doing? Anyway, I guess it's just a collection of people who are all the worst, most terrible people in the world, and I guess they stick together on that level. I don't know. Anyway, if you're going to play here, you have to spend time. So he went out and tried to buy a monastery or whatever. Okay, sure. Epstein told Bannon he could organize one-on-one meetings with foreign leaders for him, I guess, but that he would have to stay for several days. You can't just, the fear is that you gin up their hopes and emotions and then abandon them. I think you want to be an insider, not an outsider flying in and out. A representative for Bannon declined to comment. Okay, fine. Epstein often relied on his foreign contacts to learn about their views of Trump as he obsessively tracked the new president's actions. And at other times, he simply showcased his deep connections around the world in emails with other associates. Can you believe MBS? Yes, Mohammed bin Salman, or Mr. Bonesaws, as you know him. Can you believe MBS sent me a tent, carpets and all? Epstein wrote to billionaire businessman Tom Pritzker in December of 2016, referring to, of course, Mohammed bin Salman, who is now the Saudi crown prince. And by the way, can I just take a quick time out here to go over to Google and Wikipedia and ask Thomas Pritzker is, in fact, since he's having this conversation with him, is he, related to Penny and JD as well? Is it JP Pritzker? Yeah. Or is it JD? I can't remember that what we're talking about. The governor of Illinois. I'm blanking out here, so I'll have to take a look. Here we are. Governor of Illinois. Pritzker, his initial JB. I don't know. JB, JP, JD. He told me I could call them either one. I don't know. I forget about it. But JB Pritzker. I assume they're related. I think so. Thomas Pritzker is an American billionaire, heir, and businessman. They got billions to go around, I guess. A member of the Pritzker family, although that was obvious from his name. He is chairman and chief executive officer of the Pritzker organization. Isn't that interesting, that the Trump organization and the Pritzker organization, which manages the various Pritzker family business assets. Pritzker is the executive chairman of the Hyatt Hotels Corporation. So there you go. Let's see. He's the son of Jay Pritzker and his wife, Marion Friend. Thomas's great-grandparents were Ukrainian Jewish immigrants, by the way. And Annie and Nicholas Pritzker, just in case you need to catch up on that. Let's see. Are we going to find what's the family connect? I don't know whose kids are whose. And whether they're cousins or, for all I know, siblings, I'm not sure. Pritzker, though, it says down here in the Wikipedia personal life section, Pritzker was named in a deposition filed under oath by Virginia Giuffre, related to her being sexually trafficked through the Jeffrey Epstein network. She testified in a deposition that she was once sexually abused by Pritzker. Oh. Well, that makes things difficult. But back to the article here again. So apparently they decided not at that moment to chat about having both molested and attacked Virginia Giuffre. And I'm sorry if I can't get the pronunciation of that last name right. I saw a guidance given somewhere on all of that. But instead, hey, can you believe MBS gave me a tent, carpets and all? Like, really, I'm not certain why that's a subject of conversation at all, but it does sound like MBS just making extravagant gifts for no good reason. But now I got to go back to the Pritzker family thing. If he's the son of Jay Pritzker, and then we go there, and can I look at personal life and see who his kids are? Pritzker, they have 5 children, and they are Nancy Pritzker, who died by suicide at age 24 back in 1972. Thomas Pritzker, who, as you know, chair of Hyatt Foundation, chairman of Marmon Holdings, and director of Royal Caribbean, the cruise line, so I guess don't go on that. And the Pritzker Foundation. John Pritzker runs his own private equity firm, Giolo Capital, which focuses on investments in hospitality, entertainment, and health and wellness companies. Tells you nothing. Let's see. In 2010, he purchased a majority interest in the Joie de Vivre hotel chain, later merging it with the Pomeranc family's Thompson Hotel Group. They love hotels. Daniel Pritzker, musician and filmmaker, served as trustee of the J. Pritzker Foundation along with his wife Karen. Unfortunate name these days. He also founded the J. Pritzker Academy in Ta Chet, Cambodia. Prominent supporter of Providence St. Mel School in Chicago and Tufts University. He is the owner of Jerry Garcia's famed guitar Wolf, which he purchased at auction for $789,500. I hope it was a charity auction. Anyway, and then there's also Gigi Pritzker, film and play producer and CEO of Odd Lot Entertainment. So, yeah, I guess there must be cousins of Penny and JB, and I'm not sure how the relationship goes, and I don't know whether we want to trace it any further if it's, at least as distant as cousins anyway, but awkward. So yeah, can you believe MBS sent me a tent, carpets and all? He said to Tom Pritzker for some strange reason. A tent? Pritzker wrote back. I think that is code for I love you. Or maybe code for go pound sand. Better check your KSA, I assume, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Urban Dictionary. Pritzker did not immediately respond to a request for comment, although that sounds like a pretty stupid email chain that led nowhere, and he was just looking for, I feel like I need to respond to Epstein so that he knows that I read his email. All right. A year before, I'm not certain why we're even looking at that, except that it has to do with MBS. A year before he reached out to Yaglund for help with the Russians, Yaglund asked Epstein to visit him in Strasbourg, France, so that Epstein could help him, quote, understand more about Trump and what's going on in the American society, which is probably a good idea, just not meeting with him. Among Epstein's international connections was, there's another one, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, a businessman based in the UAE. Sulayem asked Epstein 2 weeks before Trump's first inauguration if he should accept the invitation extended to him by Trump associate Tom Barrack, who was also all over all these emails, who oversaw the event. Barrack did not immediately respond to a request for comment on that one. Epstein responded that it would be very crowded, but might be worth it to make connections in Washington or New York before and after the festivities. Do you think it will be possible to shake hands with Trump? Sulayem responded. It's unclear if Epstein replied. Simple enough request, but okay. Saudi representatives declined to immediately respond to a request for comment, and the Russian embassy in Washington didn't either. Yaglan couldn't be reached for comment, and Sulayem didn't respond. Nobody wanted to talk to anybody about any of this stuff. The most important part about it being that, I don't know, Epstein felt free, despite the fact that everybody knew that there were personal connections, even at that time, with Trump, to talk to the Russians about, I'll tell you stuff about how to deal with him that will give you the advantage in dealing with him. And I'm not so certain that was like super patriotic, but no one ever thought that Jeffrey Epstein was a patriot. And by the way, there were some other things, I guess, related to the email dump yesterday that noted that Epstein was in the passport collection game. He's certainly somebody that was, would not have thought twice about absconding from the United States and declaring his citizenship elsewhere. So I don't know. That seems weird and damaging all by itself, and probably would have come up at any trials and would later have had the effect of partially discrediting any testimony he might have provided against Donald Trump or anybody else in all of this. Just noting that for the record. All right, a couple other stories off of the Jeffrey Epstein beat, although we may end up coming back to it. No promises on that. Something from the Bulwark today that, along the way, there were like 10 things where I was reading through and said, oh, yeah, right, we need to circle back and hit this thing or that thing. One of the other Epstein episodes of the day, apparently, before finally swearing in Adelita Grijalva, and why I was so anxious for her to just take the oath, sign the petition, and then give her speech, was they were working on trying to get Lauren Boebert, I guess. Once Nancy Mace spent the whole day denying that she had any intention of removing her name, and as it turns out, she didn't do it. Greg explained why that might have happened, but it didn't happen, or why it may have happened that she didn't take her name off. And then, anyway, so they started working on Lauren Boebert on that one. I don't know whether they're comfortable with Murderer Trader Green anymore. She seems to be staking out independence ground. So maybe they figured Lauren Boebert might be the next person to work on. And it came to pass that word leaked that Lauren Boebert had gone to the White House for meetings to be prevailed upon by the president, but that these meetings were taking place in the Situation Room, as opposed to, say, anywhere else. Over lunch, a meal certainly would have been appropriate. Oval Office would have been relatively appropriate for it. And it was kind of amazing, as, to me, I was amazed. The government is still shut down, okay? And if there's any real reason for the president to be in the Situation Room, it's certainly not to try to bribe or cajole a member of Congress into helping him continue to cover up the Epstein thing. What are you using the Situation Room for that in this situation? And Marcy Wheeler had a thought, which I thought was worth passing on, that if you're in the Situation Room, that is a place where there is standard protocol of taking away your communications devices. You don't have any. In other words, it would leave Boebert subject to these, negotiations, but without anybody being allowed to have a personal recording device with them should they decide to leak information about what was said or what was maybe promised to Boebert if she would remove her name from the petition. But also somebody made a great point along the way during the day's negotiations that if Trump were to give away some fantastic concession to Boebert to get her to remove her name, and word got out that you could threaten to sign the petition or even sign it and then be next in line to get these fabulous gifts from Donald Trump, that's not actually going to undo things for him. It's just going to make him have to pay off other members as well. So anyway, the whole thing collapsed. But that was a good explanation, I thought, of why they might have done it in the Situation Room versus anywhere else. I mean, Lauren Boebert, most members of Congress wouldn't think to record a meeting with the president in the Oval Office and then leak that. Lauren Boebert might do it. So they took that away. Or, other staffers could certainly have done it too. All right. So over to another piece of news, the Bulwark. We're required to apparently now cite the Bulwark all the time. Will Sommer has the latest on Kash Patel's private jet problem, which we heard about the other day. But now we hear it's even worse than it looks. How do we know? The headline says so. They never lie in headlines. Subheader I like, this dude can't stop flying to Nashville. What's going on? Why is it worse? This is actually from a couple of days ago. Now I feel like I thought this was being circulated as brand new, like it got worse. But did we read the news? Kash Patel keeps taking private jets to his girlfriend's home city. I had heard that a lot. FBI Director Kash Patel has had quite a week, facing criticism for taking a government jet to see his country singer girlfriend perform at a wrestling match, in Pennsylvania, then taking the jet to her home city of Nashville. He chose to fire a veteran FBI official in charge of the Bureau's planes. As a result, he then followed that by having the FBI instruct at least one flight tracking website to stop sharing public data about his jet. And then on Sunday, this is new to me, even if it's not brand new news. On Sunday, he took to X to lash out at his critics, claiming that his girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, is a country music sensation who has done more for this nation than most will in 10 lifetimes. That does seem like an awful lot. But apparently, not just an awful lot to say about his girlfriend to put on her shoulders, but it seems like a lot of flights. But apparently not enough to satiate the masses. Even right-wingers were taking shots at him, with podcaster Candace Owens declaring him the most embarrassing human in the United States. Well, geez. And nicknaming him Crash Out Patel. Crash out, huh? Okay. And so Patel did what many men would do in a moment of great personal stress. He left town to lay low. On Friday, he flew to Fort Lauderdale, where his stay overlapped with the Great Gatsby-themed party hosted at Trump's Pervalago Resort and Sex Dungeon. Please don't stop calling it that at this point, now that you're finding out so much more about Epstein's recruitment there. It's not clear if Patel actually attended, but come on, give me a break. Then, having already been dinged for taking his government jet to visit his girlfriend in Nashville, Patel did it once more, with public flight data showing that he had, in fact, I guess, showed up in Nashville. And I guess that's where I run into the paywall. So, back to they figured out at the Bulwark how to prevent us from getting around their paywall using Instapaper. But you get the idea. I just wanted to put on the record that things are getting worse for him too. And if we see movement towards the exit at any point for Kash Patel, you'll know what was piling up on that. Okay. Let's see. Oh, you know what we didn't mention? Might as well, since we just have a minute or two left here. One of the funnier anecdotes that Epstein alleged to have been part of his knowledge of Trump and his behavior. But basically saying there were several emails in which he hinted that Trump was among the grosser old perverts that he actually knew, and he knew a lot of them. But one of the more entertaining ways of putting it was, you can ask my house staff about this, and I mean, that's pretty pretentious all by itself, but ask about what story. Trump was so interested and excited about the prospect of making his way out to Epstein's pool, where the young girls of the day were frolicking about in their bikinis, although, at least they had bikinis on. But he was so interested in getting out there that he actually walked into and bumped his nose on the glass sliding door, not realizing that it was, in a direct path between him and the girls. Asked my house staff about the nose print he left on there because he was trying to make a beeline out there. I thought that was a pretty entertaining piece of information from all of that. All right. Well, there's lots to catch up on, and there's always Friday to do it. And we'll have to take a look at some of the long reads about that. ProPublica has some great information and some long pieces about, one, the fact that the spectacular ICE raids at the apartment building in Chicago, which once again alleged that they were about rounding up Tren de Aragua gang members who had taken over the building. As it turns out, just like in Aurora, A, they hadn't taken over the building, and B, nobody arrested has been charged with just about anything, much less being members of Tren de Aragua. And then, of course, a ProPublica look at how it is that President Trump keeps insisting that he believes that entire American cities are burning down and riots are raging. The misleading story that Fox News told about Portland before Trump sent troops, the subject of a new piece by Rob Davis at ProPublica, basically documenting exactly what they did and using old footage of Portland to pretend that the riots were still ongoing. And they weren't even riots, selective cuts of scenes that make it look like they were more widespread. And, of course, the use of scenes from other cities that they didn't disclose were not, in fact, Portland and were not, in fact, happening at the moment. But, Trump, once again, fooled by television, as he often is. All right, more information still. We want to get some more about the weird provision of the shutdown bill that allows senators to sue over having their phones information tracked by the FBI as well.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Among other things, I would point out, by the way, that don't forget that it was just metadata. It wasn't the content of their conversations that people were looking at. And I would bet that there's some overlap between the Republicans who thought it was okay to steal your metadata, but just not theirs. All right, I bet Justice Putnam knows something about that too. Let's see what comes up next on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We'll see you tomorrow.